Hey guys, this week we're going to be talking about the Galapagos and we're going to be looking at it with Cara from Lindblad. And she just got back. And guys, you are not going to believe some of the great stories and the great experiences that she had. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Cruise Chat. I'm Kathleen Penner, owner of Plenty of Sunshine Travel, and today I'm joined by Cara, and Cara is from Lindblad, and I am very excited to meet with both Cara and Lindblad again. Sorry, that stuttered a little bit on that one. We've got the opportunity to meet two other times, and if you want to go back and look at those playlists, by all means, go back and check those out because there's some great content. We did a great brand overview. We talked about all of your really exciting programs with National Geographic and lots of great stuff. But today I'm super excited because she just returned from a great trip from the Galapagos. So I cannot wait to hear her personal experience. So I'm just going to turn it right over to you. And here we go.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. It's such a pleasure to be with you again. And thank you for having me. And it's funny how, we were chatting about this photo, and this is indeed a sea lion. And what I love about travel, and especially traveling with Lindblad Expeditions, is the educational component on every trip. And so I love that in real time, landing on a beach in Galapagos early in the morning.
Mm.
I was able to know the difference because I started calling them seals. And before I had my early morning coffee, and
Yeah.
I realized and learned that a big difference between sea lions and seals and how you can tell from the outside is their little ear flaps. The sea lions, you can actually see their visible ear flap. So I thought that was a fun little tidbit. Whereas
Yes.
seals, it's their ears are flat, so
Mhm.
they don't have an ear flap.
Oh, wow. And that's funny because I looked at it, I'm like, oh, is that a seal? So I even made the same thing. I
I
made the
love
same
it. And
mistake
that's
as
what I love
well.
about travel in general. We learn so much from
Oh,
traveling. I
I
just
know.
love it.
I agree with you
And
on that one.
so just a little bit of background, just a reminder, the fact that we've actually been in business for over 50 years.
Oh my
We are pioneers
goodness.
in expedition travel, and we were the first to take non-scientific travelers to Antarctica back in 1966. And we
Incredible.
were actually the first to take non-scientific travelers to the Galapagos in 1967. And so that's why I love that you've been wanting for me to chat about Galapagos and my
Yes.
experience there when I went in March,
Mhm.
because actually Lars Erik Lindblad is actually known as the father of ecotourism, Kathleen. And I'm so proud that he really saw travel as an incredible opportunity to expose people to the world so they might think differently about this beautiful planet. And so when he took non scientific travelers to Galapagos back in 1967, he actually saw this area not protected. And so there were a lot of invasive species from a lot of explorers that were in the Galapagos Islands.
Mhm.
So Lars Erik Lindblad actually helped pay the wages for 2 years for the Galapagos to have the first two national park rangers to help start preserving the Galapagos Islands until it became, the UNESCO Heritage Site. It became that in the 70s. So
Oh,
it wasn't protected back until the 70s, this beautiful
and
area.
in the Galapagos, they have so many different species of different, different birds that we don't get here and different sea life. So that's really amazing that he had paid for that for those first little bit just to get the program off the ground. And now it's much more protected. So that's awesome.
And what I didn't realize too is when I went there, there were people had introduced goats, for instance, and pigs, and so it was really an area that so many invasive species were in. So there are some local farms in certain areas, and there
Mhm.
are four islands of the Galapagos, which we'll get into, that have people living in them. They are actually habitated. People are living there. So it's really incredible too that his son Sven Lindblad is at the helm of our company still today. And
Mhm.
so that family legacy is really living through all areas of our company. And what I loved is that Sven actually used to be a guide in East Africa, and he
Mhm.
wanted to bring that game drive experience. So if any of you know that safari experience of being in a Jeep and looking at the wildlife
Mhm.
from the comfort and safety of the Jeep, he really brought more modern expedition to reality with using these early game drives
Mm.
and using that Zodiac, this little rubber boat, as a
Yeah.
platform for wildlife. And if you see, Kathleen, in this picture, the platform in the Zodiac at the bow there,
Hmm.
this actually was from a feedback form for over the years from our guests, because we made it easier and more comfortable for guests to get off the ship and come right into the Zodiac. So that little platform, guests can just step right on and get in
Yeah.
into the Zodiac.
That would be a lot nicer than worrying about, oh no, am I going to fall as they're stepping in? And it gets a little bit dicey and tippy, but having that stable platform is great.
And so we explore all 7 continents. So wherever the water touches the land, including several rivers, we are traveling across all 7 continents, ranging from 4-day trips all the way up to 34-day trips, all on small ships.
Mhm.
So even in the Galapagos, we have 2 ships all year round.
Okay.
And what's really important of choosing a small ship expedition, just to remind everyone, is that as soon as you're on a ship that's more than 200 passengers, not everyone can get off at the same time. So
Mhm.
all of our ships are under 150 passengers to get everyone off, but we do have a fleet of 17 ships,
Wow.
10 ships that we own, and then 7 that we charter. So for areas like the Amazon, we have a
Mhm.
little ship, the Delphine 2, that we charter. And then we also have the Sea Cloud 1 and the Sea Cloud 2, gorgeous ships doing areas like the Mediterranean and Caribbean 2 and Egypt and the Nile.
Mhm.
But you mentioned National Geographic earlier, and I love the fact that we have had a collaboration with National Geographic since 2004. So we did join forces to further inspire the world through expedition travel. So this collaboration in exploration, research, and technology really provides an extraordinary travel experience for guests that come with us, Kathleen. And we actually we just extended this collaboration and sign the agreement to 2040. So
Wow.
2040. And from my knowledge, National Geographic actually doesn't sign collaboration agreements for that long. So this is it's something to be very proud of.
Very proud. Absolutely. That's a good long time. It's a great stretch because then they know that you're really caring about the areas that you're in for them to put their faith in your cruise line for that long too.
And so the 10 ships that we own, to pay homage to this relationship, we've actually named the 10 ships that we own after National Geographic.
Cool.
So let's talk about the Galapagos. This is one of our top destinations because, we have been taking travelers there since 1967, as well as the fact that we have 2 ships there all year round, because there is no bad time
Mm-hmm.
to go to the Galapagos Islands. So it's approximately 1,000 kilometers from South America mainland Ecuador.
Okay.
And it's famed for unique animal species that actually drew interest to Charles Darwin back in 1835. So there is no bad time to travel to the Galapagos. And what I realize is that there's wildlife at every turn.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a wildlife enthusiast, if you love nature, this is absolutely like no other place on the planet. And the animals that are on land too, they're not shy. And when the sea lions, when they're in the water, they're not shy
No.
because they are know that they don't have any predators in these
Mm-hmm.
areas.
Right.
So they've
And
gotten
it's
used
funny
to it.
because I know that you always tell your guests, try and keep a safe distance from them. We don't want you approaching all of the sea lions or any of the other wildlife, but the wildlife doesn't care about that and they'll walk right up to you. So that's a lot.
Exactly. They don't get the memo. They
I
do not
know.
get the memo.
They got to get with the program, but no, it's awesome because then you can have that experience in a really nice up close picture too.
And with the Galapagos Islands too, they're so spread out. And
Mhm.
so they're actually, it takes quite a distance to travel, even on a small ship from one end to the area to the other. So
Mhm.
a lot of people have asked me, Kathleen, and I don't know if you've received this question before, but why a small ship for Galapagos rather than a land-based program? And especially someone like me, I get seasick. But the thing with the Galapagos Islands is if you were to stay on one island, you're taking so much of the day to explore and to go out you're not spending a lot of time in the heart of other islands.
Hmm.
So I do really recommend, even for the non-cruisers on the line, to highly recommend, maybe this is your entryway to expedition cruising
Hmm.
or your gateway to cruising in general, when you're thinking of the Galapagos Islands, because it is an excellent way of exploring and
Yes,
maximizing time of exploring all these islands.
exactly. Your time is very valuable, and being able to see the most in the limited time you have there, and the ships are the best way to do it.
And these islands are young. They're 15 million years old,
Hmm.
and they are not tropical islands.
No.
And I didn't know that until I traveled there in March.
Hmm.
And when I'm looking at pictures like this, again, these little sea lion pups did not get the memo, and they came right up to this amazing guest and were curious to say, "Why are you taking a picture of me?" But I didn't realize that these are not tropical islands, and that was a big wake up call for me because I loved how much wildlife there was, and it's truly like no other place on
Yeah.
the planet, not just for wildlife, but also scenery and
Mhm.
volcanic rock formations.
Oh, beautiful.
But with every expedition, with Lindblad Expeditions, we believe that part of the expedition is getting off the ship as much as possible.
Hmm.
So we include so many daily activities in the Galapagos and all of our trips that we believe are essential elements of exploration. So when you're choosing Lindblad Expeditions to come to the Galapagos, everything is included except for diving. So if you are a scuba diver, we will plan that on one of our ships. That's the only thing that's not included. But all the daily activities are included, including open bridge with the captain. And I loved being in the Galapagos at about 10 o'clock at night, looking at the stars, going on the bridge, I asked the first mate where the Southern Star was, or the Southern Cross, sorry, because I had never seen the Southern Cross and the Big Dipper under the same sky. And for me,
Absolutely.
that was a real moment in the Galapagos. If you're a stargazer as well, it's not just about the wildlife and scenery in the Galapagos. I loved the magic of being on the water and looking up at the stars.
That's incredible. And you're right, there are whole different star systems that they have there that we don't get to see that frequently.
Exactly, especially living in the northern hemisphere. It's neat
Mhm.
that being in the southern hemisphere, the Earth, I didn't realize, is going into the Milky Way, and so there's so many more stars in the southern hemisphere that we can see. But with at the heart of the expedition experience are these sturdy little rubber boats that we're familiar with that enable us to land on
Mhm.
shores and with any infrastructure. So sometimes we're landing right on the shore in the Galapagos, but there were some times where we're landing on a little rocky area that kind of creates steps with rocks so that we're going on a hike. And so these little rubber boats are the perfect platform for getting on and off the ship and getting on landings. So they're quickly and easily deployable, and they really allow for up close views
Yeah.
uh, at water level.
Oh, goodness.
So I loved exploring on these little rubber boats in the Galapagos because you never know what you're going to see. So if you
Hmm.
can take a look closely at this picture on the bottom left there, this
Hmm.
is actually a sunfish. So these
Oh,
are on the western portion of the Galapagos Islands.
okay.
And this sunfish was spotted. And so we were able to slow the Zodiac down and stop it. And the naturalist in real time, again, that educational component
Yes.
to Lindblad Expeditions trip, we were able to hear about the sunfish in real
Mhm.
time and then just sit there and experience. You never know what's going to show up when you're in a little
Right.
Zodiac doing a Zodiac cruise. So
Goodness.
I
I
love not only
love.
going on a landing, but the Zodiac cruises.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Because every time you go out, it's something different.
Yes, absolutely. Packing the sense of adventure
Mhm.
is huge, and being open to you never know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
But also hiking is
Mhm.
included. So lots of contemplative walks. We break up into small groups in the Galapagos, so limited excursions to about max 12 to 14 guests in a small group. But we're all off the ship at the same time. And so we are on ships that are 92 passengers and 48 guests. So we have two ships in the Galapagos all year round. And we're trying to get the hikes early in the morning before the day kind of warms up. So we're off the ship approximately 4 times a day in the Galapagos. It's actually, you can sleep when you get home from the Galapagos because there was no time to sleep. I was up
Right.
really early out on landings, and there is something for everyone. So with our Galapagos trips, when I was on board, there was a brother and sister that were in their 50s, and the gentleman, he had just had a knee replacement a few months prior, and he wasn't able to do the really steep hike. But there's other options. So our expedition team pivoted, and instead of going on the longer hike, some of the guests that couldn't do this longer and steep hike, they went out in a Zodiac and saw a different type of excursion and saw some other really cool things. They actually saw a Galapagos penguin, which was neat. So I love coming back on board. We form a great little community on board. And I loved sitting at lunches and dinners and hearing about what other people saw.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's incredible.
It's part of the joy of cruising with more people, because
Mhm.
I did love just sitting and at a table of six and wondering who's going to come up and who I'm going to meet next and who I can have the pleasure of dining with.
Yes.
It's kind of like a river cruise in that sense with the
Mhm.
Galapagos too. We're getting off the ship, then coming back on for breakfast, getting back off, coming back on for lunch, going back for another couple of excursions in the afternoon, and then coming back for a daily recap and dinner.
Amazing. That's great.
But
Oh,
I love the contemplative walks. You never know what you're going to see. So not only again, there's different months we're seeing different things because there's no bad time to go to the Galapagos. But
right.
I love just packing the sense of adventure. And
Mhm.
one excursion, I didn't realize flamingos were in Galapagos until my trip
Goodness.
in March. And so flamingos have been in the Galapagos Islands for about 75,000 years. And
Wow.
so I loved being able to go on a contemplative walk and then coming across a lagoon or a lake, if you
Mhm.
will, of flamingos.
Incredible. Wow.
But I didn't realize that blue-footed boobies did not have blue feet when they were born. So this is an example of a little contemplative walk where a naturalist is explaining in real time the fact that blue-footed boobies, this is a fledgling, this is a chick, and it's very vulnerable out on the ground because they can't
Mhm.
fly at this time. And he looks quite large.
That's what I was
I
going to
was
say. That
shocked.
doesn't look like a little baby, but wow. Incredible.
And one of my favorite moments too, again included, is snorkeling. Now,
Mhm.
I hadn't snorkeled in 13 years since my honeymoon in Fiji. And I was worried, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to snorkel? Am I going to enjoy it? Am I going to be able to do it? And there is something safe for every level of snorkeling. And I love the peacefulness in the Galapagos Islands being in the water. So we supply the snorkels, the face masks, the also the wetsuits.
Mhm.
I didn't use a wetsuit. Some people did use them for buoyancy. They just
Okay.
felt like there was a level of buoyancy or to protect from sun. So I used my rash guards, my longer sleeve rash guards, but a lot of people actually, instead of lathering themselves with sunscreen, they did use the
The
dry suits, the wetsuits for that as well.
Awesome. That's a great way to do it too. And then you don't need to worry about, putting chemicals into the water. You're protected, and the amazing sea turtle that you're swimming right beside there is protected as well.
That's such a great point. So many people don't realize how many chemicals are in sunscreen.
Mhm.
And even if it says sometimes if it's reef protected, just looking at the ingredients of what's sustainable in the waters, it's such a great point.
Yeah.
And so with the sea turtles were so peaceful. And I had seen, sea turtles in Hawaii, but there was this
Mhm.
special aspect of having them just swim right underneath you, potentially, depending on where you are. And the sea lion pups are so playful. So different ages of sea lions have different interaction levels. And being below the sea and having these little guys just kind of depending on, they maneuver, they're like little ballerinas and they
Mhm.
just are so flexible. And they sometimes mimic you as well. So they're really phenomenal creatures. But I love taking a moment and just swimming with even the adults. And again, they don't get the memo. You're trying to stay a safe distance, about, 14, 15 feet. But
Mhm.
they just are, the currents just taking them and the adults are just chilling.
Oh,
So I think I encountered more adults, Kathleen, on my trip because they didn't want anything to do with me. They were just kind of, da-dum, 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 relaxing in the water. And
that's
so I really did just take a moment to just be present.
yeah. Oh, goodness. And I mean, what kind of memory is that, right? Like, can you imagine just looking back and going, oh, yeah, I was like, an arm's distance away from this beautiful creature. That's incredible.
And I'm not a photographer. I did not bring my camera, but I know if some of you are photographers or not photographers, bringing an underwater camera, I know that a lot of the guests that were traveling with me really enjoyed that. I
Yes.
do recommend putting the camera down for an excursion or two just to take in the
Mhm.
areas that we're in. But the underwater camera, I know a lot of people love that.
Yes. Mhm. Incredible.
And then again, the sea turtles, the magnificent area. And a lot of the time, the wildlife is about 10 feet, I found, from the surface. And so we're going out to certain coves and areas where the wildlife is, but it's not as deep as people might think it is as well. So if you are a diver, that is an additional cost,
Mhm.
and people can dive deeper.
Mhm.
But I really enjoyed the wildlife that we could see.
Yeah.
And on my trip too, there were some people who were not comfortable swimmers.
Mhm.
And we provided these great flotation devices. So
Perfect.
there are not only wetsuits that we provide, but we also have these incredible flotation devices for
Mhm.
people who don't want to get out of their comfort zone. And we
Right.
always have a support Zodiac way
Mhm.
out in the distance. So if someone does want to go in, our typical snorkels were about an hour and 20 minutes a session. But if someone wanted to go back early to the ship or simply sit in the Zodiac if they were done snorkeling, that is fine as well.
Amazing. And it is really nice to snorkel too, and especially if you've got that flotation device, because you could just kind of lay in the water and just look down and all around, and it's just so relaxing.
Oh, relaxing is the perfect word for it. So if people are into that wellness type of travel,
Mhm.
getting in the heart of nature, detoxing from Wi-Fi and internet, it is the perfect destination the Galapagos offers.
Yes.
But part of the gem of having a larger vessel in the Galapagos, so having a 48 passenger ship and a 92 passenger ship, is not only stability. So if people get seasick like me, I loved having that stable platform that the ship
Mhm.
offered. But we have room to store our glass bottom boats. So
Oh.
included on the trip, on the National Geographic Islander 2 and the National Geographic Endeavour 2,
Mhm.
we have glass bottom boats. Now it is weather dependent, of course, like any other activity. But
Right.
I jumped in the glass bottom boats, and they're covered, so covered they're shaded. Uh,
Yes.
and this is a great opportunity for families that are traveling together, whereas maybe someone's not comfortable getting in the water. There are also some people who are scared of sharks because we ran into hammerhead sharks as well as reef tip black tip reef sharks.
Okay. Yeah.
And so people sometimes or white tipped reef shark, sorry. And people were felt like that was a bit out of their comfort zone for them.
Mhm.
So again, for every level of comfort, a little something for everyone, people
Yes.
choosing their own adventure, Kathleen. People
Yeah.
can have their own comfort zones. But what I love jumping in the Zodiac, this is actually from my
Your own
phone.
pictures.
It is very clear. So I saw spotted eagle rays on my trip, which I loved. I didn't see them
Yes.
when I was snorkeling. So
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities to still see wildlife and
Yeah.
get that underwater experience in the Galapagos on the glass bottom boats.
Oh, wonderful. That's incredible. And that's one thing too, about your point of having different adventures for different comfort levels. And that's something Lindblad is so good about doing, is they make sure that everybody has the same experience in terms of, getting out there and enjoying nature, and just maybe in a little bit of a different way, but you're still actually going to be able to get out there. And I think that that's awesome that you guys do that.
And also kayaking is included. So not on all of our destinations, even including areas like Antarctica and Alaska, but kayaking the Galapagos was so special, and that is where I saw hammerhead pups swimming underneath my kayak.
Hmm.
And so for all levels of experience,
Hmm.
people can kayak if they wish. And this is a very special moment of paddling. So I kayaked twice on my trip, and it was just so peaceful and getting that different perspective of being on the
Mhm.
water and being so quiet with no Zodiac engines. It was a moment that I'll never forget, paddling and seeing those little baby, the little hammerhead pups underneath in the water, which was so exciting. And then we also have stand-up paddleboarding.
Mhm.
And so our stand-up paddle boards, I did not do it. I'm not a stand-up paddle boarder. I don't think I really have the core strength, but maybe I should try it. I loved watching some people stand-up paddleboard. So when I was in my kayak, later on, a 16-year-old, she was traveling with her parents, and her parents went off and did something else, and she kayak or she stand-up paddleboarded. So
Mhm.
it's so neat again, having met her at a lunch and
Yeah.
then seeing her out on the stand-up paddleboard. I felt like I was meeting a friend, an old friend, out on the water. And I loved seeing her paddleboard. And sometimes she'd spot the wildlife.
Mhm.
And so I'd take the kayak and go, oh my gosh, she's like, look at over here, there's a sea turtle. Or, oh my gosh, look at over here, there's the hammerhead pups.
Yeah. Oh.
And it was so neat to have that experience with someone that I just had met on the trip.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that shared experience, incredible. Wow, that's awesome.
And again, I'm not into photography,
Yeah.
but I do want to take pictures for me on my
Mhm.
phone. And so there's workshops on board for every level. So
Lovely.
I went to a 40-minute workshop on how to take better pictures with my camera phone, my
Mhm.
Samsung phone. But I love that there were photographers that were not just, they were amateurs, hobbyists, but also very, very avid photographers on our trip. And
Oh, great.
everyone got something out of the photography programs. So on
Fabulous.
every single Lindblad expedition, we have a National Geographic certified photographer.
Mhm.
And then on four of our vessels that are blue water ships, the National Geographic Orion, the National Geographic Endurance, the National Geographic Resolution, as well as the National Geographic Explorer, we have a full-time National Geographic photographer that is a shooter for National Geographic on those four vessels on
Oh,
all those
wow.
itineraries. So
Goodness.
this is a very special, special program that we offer, that I really loved seeing in real time on the ship, having the photography workshops, but then also in real time when we're out on landings or in the
Right.
Zodiacs.
To put that into practice and be able to take those pictures, incredible. Yeah, cool.
And with Lindblad Expeditions, we've actually created a fantastic farm to table cuisine.
Mm.
And so there is one of the meals that we had where all of the food came from the Galapagos Islands.
Mm.
And it was a pleasure to have one of our naturalists, the beef that had come from one of our meals was
Yeah.
from her father's farm. And
Oh.
having that connection to community, to the locals in these areas and supporting the locals. One of
Mhm.
my favorite days was not only going to the giant tortoise farm where we saw giant tortoises. They eat long grass, and giant tortoises now, it's actually illegal to own a giant tortoise. So whatever island we're on that have the giant tortoises, they're allowed to migrate anywhere on the islands. So what the farmers have done is to keep their cattle in,
Mhm.
but to keep the giant tortoises from coming in and out, the fences are high enough for the giant tortoises to crawl underneath the
Oh,
fence. So
okay.
on one excursion in the day that we were visiting farms like these
Mhm.
ones here, we saw a cow next to a giant tortoise. So the giant tortoise was sitting there eating grass, and then the cow is just standing there. So again, another great day
Mhm.
of really seeing locals' culture, as well as seeing where our food comes from.
Okay.
And even one of our vice president of hotel operations, Anna, she actually sometimes goes in and helps the owners of the farms harvest. So whether it's
Oh,
the carrots
wow.
for our ships or the lettuce, and so I really love that community, but also
Mhm.
that sustainability aspect because
Yes.
we try and have zero waste on board as well.
Mhm.
So a highlight for me too was going into a coffee plantation. So I met a coffee farmer, and it was neat to be able to have meet him and actually have his coffee and taste it in real time. Or the sugar plantation.
Mhm.
where we were able to go in and try raw sugar from a farmer as well. So it's one of the days on the ships, depending on the itinerary, the
Mhm.
shorter itinerary or the longer itineraries that we offer, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I love that day of being immersed in some of the farms.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's
highlight.
incredible. It's always nice to know where your own food comes from and to see, it in the harvest stages and then see it on your plate as well is kind of a neat thing that you had then.
And what's unique with Lindblad Expeditions is our Global Explorers program. And we offer this in 5 destinations. So Alaska, Baja California, Iceland, our 14-day journey to Antarctica trip, as well as our Antarctica direct program where we fly to Antarctica. But it's also offered in the Galapagos. And this is really special. So National Geographic actually created this program special for us. And I loved in real time being in the Galapagos and seeing there were 5 kids on board my trip,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the excitement through their eyes was remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And they get little field notebooks, so real hands-on experience.
Neat.
And so I loved having dinner with a family and seeing the daughter draw her drawing of the flamingos and taking notes of what the naturalist shared with them about flamingos. And so parents can actually bring their kids to these destinations and have an immersive educational component. So
Excellent.
kids and teens can participate in this fantastic program led by National Geographic certified field educators, which is huge.
Yes,
And
I love it.
that's not all. They can drive the Zodiacs.
No way. Oh, that's
They
so
learn how to
fun.
drive the Zodiacs.
Oh,
I
goodness.
was not allowed to drive the Zodiac. I asked.
That's great.
But those 5 children that were on board my particular voyage, I love seeing things through their eyes. And the
Mhm.
other part that I loved was at the end of the trip, the last evening for the daily briefings of the recaps of what we've seen that day and also what the expedition leader is sharing with us
Yeah.
that might be seen the next day. I loved that our captain delivered some great little certifications and driver's licenses for the kids. And that was a huge highlight, and made a big little presentation for the kids. And it just created a fantastic sense of community on board. And you know what?
Absolutely.
If there's travelers listening to Kathleen that don't want to travel with children, we
Mhm.
can always look that up and see departures where there are kids or there are not children. So,
Right.
or if someone has an only child and they want to know if another like 11-year-old or 12-year-old's on board or someone that's around the same age, we can do that as well.
Absolutely. But I would think since there's only 5 on board, that they're not going to be taking over the ship. So they're not going to be, running around and just getting in the way of a lot of people. I would think
Yeah,
they
and
wouldn't.
that's
So
a
that's
really
good.
fantastic point that you brought up. And that's why I think it's great to know how, if you don't want to be around families and children,
Mhm.
or families with young children, to be aware of that. Because there was a trip that we did have a large family on board, and
Yeah.
there was even a 2-year-old. So we don't have any age limit on our trips, which is, I think parents kind of know
Their child. Yeah.
where their child is at and they know their child
Mhm.
well. And so there are trips, Kathleen is a great point that we do have a larger families or cousins traveling together. So you have some sisters bringing their kids with their husbands or partners. And
Mhm.
so that has been a highlight too, because they are small ships. So
Yes.
that intimacy does get created. So
Mhm.
great point. Great point.
So it's good to know how many. Absolutely. Yes.
And so we have 10-day trips where it's
Mhm.
7 nights in the Galapagos. So if people have the time, it's 2 nights on land-based Ecuador, either in
Okay.
Guayaquil or Quito, but then 7 nights on board exploring the islands
Hmm.
on our National Geographic Endeavour II. So the 10-day trip is what I did on this beloved National Geographic Endeavour II. I
Yes.
love being up on the observation deck. Again, the bridge was a big part that I loved, and all outside cabins, Kathleen.
Oh, good. Yes.
So
Fabulous.
because it is a small ship, only 92 guests, it is all outside cabins.
Mhm.
We do have suites as well. So for people who want more space, but I was not in my cabin at all. I was really only there to sleep because I was out on deck or out on landings, but comfortable cabins on the National Geographic Endeavour II. But we also have 7-day trips and 8-day trips. So for 4 nights in the Galapagos and 5 nights in the Galapagos. and then 2 nights in a hotel on mainland Ecuador in
Mm-hmm.
Guayaquil or Quito. And this is on our luxurious 48 passenger National Geographic Islander too. And you being a cruiser, Kathleen, I think you'd appreciate this, that it was actually the formal Crystal Esprit,
Okay.
the crystal ship.
Yeah.
So we actually renovated her, and she's a gorgeous vessel with beautiful cabins, a spa, a hot tub. We have a spa in the National Geographic Endeavour too.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a fantastic, great, luxurious vessel for people who just want that elevated level of luxury
Oh,
when they're in the
amazing.
Galapagos.
Now,
And so,
this may be a
yeah, go
dumb
ahead.
question, but how do you get from Quito to the Galapagos then? That would be a
Not a
charter
dumb question. I
flight, or
love that. That's
somebody
so
going on a
smart.
flight, a
We have a
boat, or are you
charter
getting
flight. Yeah, I love that. So we have flights that we use that we book with Aravanca.
mm-hmm.
And so we go from either Guayaquil, fly over to one of the islands, depending on the itinerary, either San Cristobal or Baltra. And then we get on the ship there. And so we're flying, and it's approximately a 2.5 hour flight. So
Okay.
not long at all. But
Yep.
if people choose to start in Quito, the flight leaves from Quito, goes to Guayaquil, lands in Guayaquil, picks up other passengers, and then continues on.
Okay.
So whether you're going from Guayaquil or Quito, it's everyone's choice.
Mm-hmm.
I went for Guayaquil, and I loved exploring Guayaquil a little bit. And I'm a foodie, so I love going to some great restaurants.
Yeah.
And when I say foodie, that's not, I just love food. And the food in different cultures. But people love Quito and the history and the culture. But
Mm-hmm.
people just being mindful. I loved that an advisor really pointed out the other day to me, if people gets that elevation sickness, and with that altitude sickness, Quito is higher elevation than Guayaquil. So some people like to fly right into Guayaquil, so they might not have that opportunity to get altitude sickness, which I thought was a really interesting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we definitely have, as we mentioned, the families that travel with us, but also solo travelers.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of solo savings. For instance, right now we have a great solo offers up to 33% off selected departures. So a lot of solo travelers come with us. People celebrating 40th birthdays or 70th birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
I also have saw a lot of mother-daughters and mother-sons with their adult children traveling with us. So maybe someone was going off to university, or this one particular gentleman, he was just joined the military. So his mom wanted to take him on one last trip, even though he's an adult, for them to kind of go together before he started another career.
Yeah. Oh, that's sweet.
And those learners, if you're someone who loves the educational component to a trip,
Mm-hmm.
or that bucket list traveler, and you want to checklist going to the Galapagos, or maybe going and seeing the polar bears in Svalbard, those are definitely the type of travelers that are coming with us too.
Absolutely.
And when people are traveling with Lindblad, I'm not sure, Kathleen, if this was mentioned on some of the other sessions, but we do have a legacy of over 50 years as responsible travel and sustainability company.
Right.
And Lindblad Expeditions is 100% carbon neutral. So we are committed to green business operations and preserving our planet for future generations. We also have an impact report that we release every year. Our one for 2023 just was released. So it's a public document. So we like to show people our commitments to the planet. And so we raised $22 million. Yeah.
That transparency is just amazing to have that report. I like that.
So at the end of the day, there is no substitute for experience. And Sven Lindblad did say, we see ourselves as far more than a travel company. We are conduit to exhilaration, to the feeling you get when you see something wild and unexpected or rare and beautiful.
Oh, very good.
So thank you so much, Kathleen, for having me today, share a little bit about the Galapagos. I could talk about for hours about the Galapagos and what it holds. And I highly recommend for people that have been, they might want to go again and explore different islands. But if you haven't been, I definitely recommend everyone putting it on their list, because it truly is magical. There is no place on the planet like the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. And just, hearing you talking about it, and having, just returned in March, it's that excitement is still there, and that is just incredibly fabulous. And I do agree, everybody needs to see at least one time in your life, to see it and to explore Galapagos, because it is completely different than anywhere else in the world. So yeah, so thank you so much for putting all that together. It is greatly appreciated. And I hope that you all have a great week, guys, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's cruise chat with Cara from Lindblad. It was so cool to hear about her experience in the Galapagos, and just to hear it from a personal perspective is so much better than to be, just hearing that the cruise line, yeah, we go there and it's a lot of fun. But it's nice to hear, personal experiences where she was out kayaking and seeing things and talking to the girl who was on the SUP, and just incredible. And oh my goodness, now I want to go there. I'm pretty sure you guys do as well. Make sure that you reach out to me at info@plentyofsunshinetravel.com, because I would love to get you to the Galapagos. And I just adore Lindblad, how they really open up the world to you. And that partnership with National Geographic is something really incredible and just phenomenal as well. Next week, I'm going to be meeting with Ritz-Carlton, and we are going to be looking at some of their really, really unique itineraries. I'm really looking forward to meeting with Ritz-Carlton, because I've only met with them once. So it's so cool to have new cruise lines all the time. So make sure you guys have subscribed to our channel, but more importantly, make sure you reach out to me, info@plentyofsunshinetravel.com. And I would love to be able to help you with all of your dream cruises. So make sure that you reach out to me, and I will make sure that we can get you to where you want to go and to get you on the cruise line that's best for you. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you all next week or on board. Bye for now.